Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you. I want to welcome you to our RIF Expert Panel. So thank you for joining us today. The goal of this series is to discuss different topics in the blockchain space with leading experts, as you are, and know what you are working on, how you are trying to solve some of the challenges of the blockchain technology and space. We also want to have a space to discuss different ideas, opinions, and to share that knowledge with the community, promote learning and collaboration. Today, we will be talking about blockchain interoperability, why it is important, and how it can be achieved. And for that, we have invited Stevan Lohja. Correct me if I'm mispronouncing your names. The Director of Developer Relations at ETC Cooperative. Daniel Nagy, Ethereum Swarm Developer. Gabriel Kurman, RSK and RIF co-founder, and Paul Riegle, VP of Product at Algorand. I would like to do a quick round of introductions. We can go in the same order if you want. Stevan, please.
Sure. Hello. Thank you for inviting me here as well. Yes, I'm Stevan Lohja. I'm a Director of Developer Relations at the ETC Cooperative. Most of our focus is around the Ethereum Classic ecosystem, mainly focused on infrastructure and curating the things that happen around our ecosystem. And I'm happy to be here.
Great, happy to have you, Daniel.
Hello, I'm Daniel Nagy, and I am one of the architects of the Swarm project, which started as part of Ethereum, but now it's an independent project, which aims to bring the decentralized storage solutions to the blockchain space. And interoperability comes up here because we want to, so it would be very inefficient to have separate storage solutions for each and every blockchain. And so our strategic goal is to make Swarm usable for decentralized applications, no matter what blockchain, well, no matter what, for applications that use different blockchains as their consensus layer.
Great.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Daniel. Gabriel?
Well, thanks for having me as well. I'm super excited to be in this panel. I'm Gabriel Kurman, co-founder of RSK, RIF, and many other projects in the space. And I believe interoperability is key in everything that we're building. And I'm very excited to be sharing also this panel with Daniel and Stevan, which represent two projects that we've been closely working together and promoting interoperability. And looking forward to do the same with Algorand and Paul in the future. So I think it's a very interesting discussion and looking forward to it today.
Great, thank you. And Paul?
Yeah, so I'm Paul Regal. I'm head of product here at Algorand. This is a particularly interesting panel to us as a sort of layer one protocol developer. We believe in a multi-chain world and the kinds of capabilities and features that we want to provide to folks on Algorand. We want to be able to extend those wherever people want to go. And so interoperability for us is one of our key pillars.
Awesome. And I will go last. My name is Diego Masini. I'm part of IOVLabs. I'm currently leading the research and innovation team with Sergio Lerner. I'm also a researcher. I have been working on this space for more than a couple of years. And interoperability for me is also an important step forward on this technology. So that's me. We can start with the questions. The first one is pretty obvious. I want to have or to know your opinion on why is blockchain interoperability important. This is an open question, so the idea is for any of us to to any of you, sorry, to answer it. So if anyone wants to take the lead.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, at a high level, I sort of feel like interoperability is the promise of blockchain, right? So it's a public permissionless platform, which among other things allows people to do peer-to-peer transfers, allows composability across solutions. And that's all true in blockchain right now, but as long as it's within each blockchain's domain. And so interoperability is really just an extension of the sort of the core promise of blockchain. And if you truly believe in that core promise, which I think probably everyone on this call does, it's something that we just simply have to do as we go forward. I also think it's sort of interesting to think about what the definition of interoperability is. There are solutions that range from piggybacking on a consensus for a particular chain, to just moving assets around, to arbitrary message passing, to do things like trigger smart contracts on other chains, all the way up to well, I need to atomically use 4 different blockchains in order to accomplish whatever goal I have. And so we've got to continue to go farther, and we've got to keep kind of broadening out what we think around interoperability.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I can tell you why I think interoperability is super important. But before that, we need to understand what we're trying to accomplish with blockchain technology. I am super excited, and I believe that this technology can transform our financial system, and then from there transform the rest of the internet, and bring it back to what it was supposed to be in the first place, an open access network where information and value can travel, and that it's available to everyone, and it's not controlled by any government or any corporation. And I think interoperability will lead to decentralization, and will lead to anti-fragility, which will make this dream come true, and give us the tools to actually be able to change something. We're trying to tackle issues that are so important for life in this planet and for humankind, but at the same time, there's a very strong control group that doesn't want anything to change and want to maintain the status quo. So if we want decentralized storage to be the norm, if we want self-sovereign identity to be the norm, if we want an open financial system available to everyone, we need to make sure that all this innovation first is open source, which is awesome and unique in our industry. So I think this is a very important plus, which make this revolution only going forward, because if you cut one project or one idea, someone else will take it and keep moving forward, as Paul was saying. But also interoperability, which makes the whole ecosystem more anti-fragile. So I think that's why it's so important. It wouldn't be that important if we were doing, online games or any other thing that could be fun, but it won't change our society or won't have the potential. So in this, in particular, I think interoperability it's extremely important.
Great, thanks, Kagu. I know that. Go.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say interoperability is really important, just like as Paul said, spot on. It's pursuing the promise of blockchain technology, which is why we're all here, is for distributed, decentralized, cross-border payments, and really it's just, these are trust minimized systems that anyone can use anywhere around the world. And if you have a token or system, whether it's doing smart contracts or currency, if you're going to go back to, you can't be isolated if you're going to provide value to the world. You have to be able to give value accessible to everyone, value transferred to everyone. And if we think about cryptocurrencies and smart contracts, like really being better forms of what we currently have today with the establishment systems, with all these very centralized systems. Some are in different districts with different laws, but we still have places where countries, they have central places where they exchange currencies, exchange precious metals, or exchange properties, or sign and write agreements. And as far as interoperability, not everyone believes in the same things. Not everyone wants this part of a system. Some people want to have different values, different fundamentals, and being able to respect everyone's differences and build things for everyone to cross-communicate, whether that's through messages, tokens, smart contracts, everything. Like, we want to have the internet of value and bring all these technologies and all the societal values that can bring to everyone. We have to have interoperability, and that's just how that vision scales.
Yeah, great.
And also,
thanks, Stevan. Go, Daniel. Sorry.
So I can only second the previous speakers in that interoperability is very, very important, because already we have thriving ecosystems around multiple blockchains, and people have assets on different blockchains. And in order to provide really a resilience and anti-fragility for these applications, in order to good ideas to be accessible to everyone, and for different services being available for the largest possible audience, we do need interoperability between the different blockchains.
Yep. Thank you, Daniel. So my next question to you is, how can we achieve this interoperability we were discussing previously? And we can start again in the same order if you want, Paul. I think you are muted, Paul.
The pros and cons of mute. So I think, first of all, making progress in this space is particularly hard, and it's particularly hard because of what it is you're trying to do. Interoperability requires many people to work together in order to achieve that interoperability. And there's different, it's a spectrum, right? There's one side of the spectrum is literally everyone tries to do their own thing. Other side is maybe there's a single kind of entity or a decentralized entity in the middle that's trying to coordinate. But however you kind of skin it, there's a lot of people trying to do a lot of different things. I think that the way to make progress here is to, as Gabriel alluded to earlier, like, you got to understand what exactly are we trying to accomplish with kind of an end use case and end goal, and then often work back from there. And that means that different groups are working on different pieces, right? Because this is the use case that's important to this group. This is the use case that's important to this group. For example, one of the things and maybe I'll talk about it later a little bit, but one of the things that we're focused on is, we're a layer one protocol. And so when we think about interoperability, we think about it in two ways. One, you got to enable a group of people to sort of create a connective tissue, a connective fabric. But two, the protocol itself should have an ability to effectively, provide the state synchronization needed from that blockchain. Like, that should be coming from the protocol itself. And so I think, I guess, to net that out, to make progress here and to achieve this blockchain interoperability, it's going to take use cases, and it's going to take each kind of layer in the stack really focusing on how can they help the overall goal, and how can they make it less trusted, more decentralized, and easier to do.
Great, thank you. Gabriel?
Well, I was thinking that actually when RSK was created, it had interoperability as a core value, right? So the reason why we created RSK is because we wanted to have the security of the Bitcoin network with the programmability and functionality of Solidity smart contracts on Ethereum. So this is the reason why we created RSK. So we always thought in building it in a way that is fully compatible with an EVM, so the ecosystem of projects and solutions working on Ethereum could also benefit and use Bitcoin infrastructure seamlessly. And I think, we've been able to achieve already several interesting use cases of interoperability. Actually, we've been working with the Swarm project for many years, and the whole idea is that the RIF storage layer of libraries will interoperate directly with Swarm and with IPFS and with SIA and Storj and other decentralized storage platforms. The idea is to make the life of developers as easy as possible and users, so they can store their reputation and decentralized subsovereign ID on any network that they want. And then the different networks will compete in terms of service, decentralization, censorship resistance, and cost. And why not? We should also let the cloud providers, traditional cloud providers, also to compete and to serve these users. We've also been working with the Ethereum Classic team. We put at their service the universal merge mining solution when ETC started having all this security breaches and 51% attacks, to enable them to benefit from the merge mining that RSK already has from the Bitcoin community and the mining pools. So at the end, we didn't move forward, and they decided a simpler, easy to implement solution. But the relationship and the discussion was very constructive, and we really appreciated that. I think it's very important, as we said before, if we work together, we can protect ourselves and make the whole ecosystem more anti-fragile. Also, today, we have a very important exclusive announcement. Just randomly, it was announced today that the Aave project, it's also making their service available and integrating with RSK. So this adds up to the Chainlink project that already integrated Link through the RSK bridge with Ethereum to RSK, and MakerDAO with DAI. So it's quite amazing, and I'm super excited to see projects, flagship projects on the DeFi space, making sure that their service is available in multiple platforms, in Ethereum Classic, in RSK, Ethereum 1, Ethereum 2, Algorand, why not? And the important thing here is how we can achieve mass adoption and serve those billions of users that are currently underserved by the traditional system. So I think all infrastructure layer 1 projects should encourage interoperability to make sure that those users are served the best and as soon as possible.
Totally agree. And congrats, Gabriel.
Yeah, thanks to the whole team. It's an amazing joint effort for many people in the community involved in this integration.
Yeah. Thanks, Gabi. Stevan?
Yeah, so achieving blockchain interoperability, it all comes down to collaboration and doing things or partnering based on shared infrastructure. For example, if another chain has because a lot of people, like I know RSK has is a good example with the Bitcoin mining solution. If your proof of work isn't secure, there's another chain that you can outsource for security. Or if your chain doesn't have smart contract functionality, you could make a call or change the state on another blockchain and return the result to that. So whether it's so collaborating in a sense to where you can be on Ethereum Classic, RSK, or Ethereum, but you could still access all the features on all these other chains while being on your chain. And I think it's just it's all healthy for each ecosystem. It's a win-win for everybody. And or you see even Swarm, they're doing their decentralized storage okay, well, a lot of other layer one blockchains don't necessarily have decentralized storage. So what can they do? They can outsource that service to another chain, or other chains can outsource to other things to where a lot of layer ones would be kind of like your account management more, or depending on how you do it. But it's all about collaborating on shared infrastructure, and you know, you're basically sharing the values across that you're sharing the values and features across all these different chains, and the only way that happens is through collaboration, whether that's with other core development teams, between different applications that are being built on there. A lot of it's been happening more and more, but you know, it all comes down to collaborating.
Yeah. Thanks, Stevan. Daniel?
So I believe that interoperability is not really binary, whether we don't have it and then we have it. I think interoperability is evolving. So just to give it a historic perspective, I think 7 or maybe even 8 years ago, Mike Hearn proposed atomic swaps. I think that was the first interoperability solution between blockchains, and it's been used ever since, first between Bitcoin and Litecoin, and now it's ubiquitous, basically. Between any two blockchains worth their salt, you can do atomic swaps. So that's where it starts. And where it ends, well, that I don't know, but hopefully we will have abstractions where the particular blockchain that is being used at the moment can be even abstracted away. So for example, we can have tokens that can live on multiple blockchains, so that you lock them in one and then you can unlock them in the other. That's a simple example where the end user only knows that they have this token, no matter what blockchain they happen to be using. So I think that achieving interoperability between blockchains is really a process, and we're going to see multiple interoperability solutions, I think, very soon. For example, one very promising development that's been long anticipated is Ethereum 2's beacon chain, which will eventually turn into the consensus layer of Ethereum 1. So Ethereum 1 will leave mining and proof of work behind and use Ethereum 2's beacon chain as its consensus layer. And so these kind of transitions, when a blockchain with all its value can simply shift such an important piece as the consensus protocol, right now it's super hard, and I mean, Ethereum is doing pioneering work in this, but I think that in the future, the way blockchain solutions evolve will be something similar, in that some interoperability solution will help people migrate their balances, their contract states, and eventually this will be to some extent abstracted away from end users. That's how I see the future.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. I think we already kind of answered part of the next question, but I would like to know what aspects are of interest to all of you regarding interoperability, and in which or in what parts are you trying to tackle currently in the projects you are working on? We can start in a different order. So I would like to hear Daniel, if you want to go first. That's not a problem.
I want to hear about the bus token.
Yes. So indeed, the most important interoperability challenge for us is having the same token living on multiple blockchains, precisely because Swarm has basically pivoted to use its own token for the storage incentives instead of using Ether, precisely as a interoperability enhancing move, which means that as soon as we have reliable bridges between EVM using blockchains, such as Ethereum Classic or RSK, it will be possible to use the same bus token, even though the client happens to be on a different blockchain, because it can be logged and unlogged securely. So this is the interoperability challenge that we're very much looking forward to tackling in cooperation with those present here in the panel. And I think that it will also alleviate some of the scaling pains that our blockchains are currently experiencing. So I think that having multi-chain tokens is a very good next step for the evolution of interoperability, and we're very much looking forward to it.
Awesome, thanks. You know who wants to go next?
I can mention two other projects that, on top of the ones that I mentioned before, that the community, the RSK and RIF community are working on. First of all, the RSK infrastructure framework, or RIF, has been conceived as fully blockchain agnostic. So the idea is that these services will operate on top of RSK, Ethereum, Ethereum Classic, Algorand, any other project, because that's how it's being conceived. And for that reason, when we created the RNS, the RSK name service, it was the first one to be blockchain, multi-blockchain. So you could resolve with your diego.rsk domain any blockchain address. So that was one of the first approaches to interoperability. And the other one is the Lumino network, that from inception was thought to be a second layer that could interact with Raiden, with the Lightning Network, and any other second layer of chain payment layer. So the idea is to make life super easy for a user that can start a payment in the Lightning Network and get someone on the other end to receive DICE or to receive dollar on chain or any other stablecoin or non-stablecoin or token. Again, as we said before, interoperability just makes the life of the user so easy that I think we should pursue it from a security standpoint, as we discussed before, for anti-fragility and decentralization, and from a user standpoint, so they can use blockchain technology without the complexity of it, in the same way that we use the regular internet today without knowing what layers are talking to each other on the back end.
Yep, great, thanks.
Yeah, so we got a couple of things, kind of categories of stuff going on. You know, one I'd say is around sort of standards, and one example of that is the Clarity language that we're working on with Blockstack as an open source smart contract language. Another one is a company called Reach is doing a bunch of work on Algorand and also on Ethereum, where they've built a smart contract language that has some and platform that has some formal verification and static verification built in. You write in Reach, it then compiles it down into both an Ethereum smart contract and an Algorand smart contract. So you write once, deploy many. And what's cool about that is, you know, they're actually abstracting away. There's many things that are cool about it. One of the things that's cool about it is they're abstracting away sort of the underlying blockchain complexity. I don't have to think about how one blockchain creates assets versus another blockchain creates assets. I simply create an asset in Reach, and then the Reach compiler figures out how to do it on each blockchain. So that's an example of a cool project that we've got going on. We've got a lot of sort of asset-based use cases. So assets that exist on Ethereum, that exist on Algorand, And there are sort of many different ways that people are accomplishing that, from centralized bridges to separate treasuries to blended tokens. And then the final one that we're working on ourselves is this concept of allowing our blockchain to attest to the state of our blockchain. So I don't need to trust an intermediary. I don't need to trust a group of people. The blockchain itself will say, here is my state as of block Y, and it'll be cryptographically provable, so that we can say 90% of the stake of our system has agreed that this is the state, and it's provable and not fakeable. So we feel like that is a really, really interesting project for moving sort of core interoperability forward and pushing some of that onus down into the layer one project itself, to be able to make it easier for those building on top.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome. So
yeah, it's pretty cool.
I will check that the coming days. Cool. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Stevan?
So we're still developing on our roadmap for Ethereum Classic, but some of the things that are on the table that we look forward to is we partnered with ETC Cooperative, and IOHK are partnered to test a lot of innovations on the new Sagano testnet. But basically, we're very supportive of, like NEPA flag clients and non-interactive proof of works. And I don't know if you ever heard of the KEVM, but just things that are more built for interoperability and more efficient ways of, basically more efficient ways of proving work on other chains and being able to submit changes to the state between chains, which is interoperable. ETC Cooperative in particular also worked with Connects to bring state channels to ETC, which that makes changing the state more efficient. Also, when it comes to like sidechain solutions, I think that's going to help a lot. But yeah, we think we're going to have a lot of cool sidechain stuff coming up, probably hopefully sometime next year.
Great. A lot of cool things happening and different angles tackling the interoperability problem. So very excited to see how this ends in a couple of years. We are halfway our time, so probably I will skip a couple of questions so we can have room for the more important ones. But I would like to I have this open question for anyone that wants to have it, and we don't need to do the whole round. Do you think, obviously, probably this is true, but there are still bigger problems to solve, like the ones we are just discussing here? This is kind of, we already know the direction to take, the use case that we want to solve, but are there any big problem that we are still considering as an unsolved problem that needs some research or experimentation? Daniel?
So I think that the biggest one is trustless, fully decentralized bidirectional bridging. So currently, Ethereum and Ethereum 2 are bridged only one way. So you can deposit funds in the Ethereum 1 and then use them in Ethereum 2, but the reverse path has not yet been achieved, because, and even though that there we had a blockchain that was specifically designed for this purpose, and when we don't have that, then between, for example, two different EVM-based chains, it's kind of the holy grail to have bidirectional bridging, fully decentralized and fully trustless. I think that's by far the biggest problem that we have, and we have yet to solve.
Yeah.
I'll just chime in that I agree, and obviously I'm biased from where I sit in the stack, but I agree, and I think it's the onus is on the layer one protocols to figure it out.
I cannot say much about it, but I can tell you that we're working on it. So not a technical problem, but I think one of the big problems that we need to solve in order to reach mass adoption is the complexity of the gas in different blockchains. No, I'm not talking about the amount, which can also be a problem, and it's been a problem right now in some layer 1 blockchains. But the fact that for a user that doesn't know what blockchain is, they have the complexity of paying with one currency and the need for the gas. And at RIF, we are working on an enveloping solution, which is an improvement of the work that the Zeppelin team has been doing in the past, which hopefully will be announced very soon, and will let users to pay directly with whatever token they are using their transactions and the transaction fees. And I think this is very interesting in this conversation, because we are planning to deploy it on RSK and make it available on Ethereum as well. Probably we should talk with Ethereum Classic and do the same with you guys. It's a very interesting technology, because it doesn't need to change the contract, so it's available for every contract that's already in existence. So there are going to be news about that soon, I'm sure. And we should discuss, Paul, also if it makes sense for Algorand. I think it's not fully EVM compatible, but maybe we can.
That's okay. We don't have an EVM.
Yeah,
we have a different model. So yeah, absolutely, we'd love to hear about that.
Sure.
Great. Stevan, I see your screen completely green. I don't know if it's by accident or on purpose. And I think you are muted.
I think there's a problem with the camera, probably. It goes green and comes back.
Yep.
Is it back now?
It's green.
No, you are still green.
I'll turn it off. Someone tried to call me, so I think maybe that messed with my video. Yeah, so yeah, one of the big problems I think is trust minimization, because we want to do things in the most trustless ways possible, because that's why we're here in the first place, is to have trust minimized solutions, people want more privacy, more decentralization, and while we could be interoperable on a technical perspective, like being able to submit let's say Solidity code on this blockchain or transfer it to this blockchain, I guess I would even say, like, what about like government interoperability? Because I spoke to some people who work in that space, and they don't understand. They can't comprehend, and say, well, that's an important place. And let's say we have all this traditional finance. How do we get them to interoperate with us? Because I would argue that they have almost all the users to this day, and while we have all these trust minimized solutions, how can we bring those type of people into our space and interoperate with us? And it also creates more of a better relationship between cyberpunks and the traditional system. But I think there's probably a lot of shared infrastructure that we can all create a lot of value on. That's probably a bigger rabbit hole, but something to think about.
Diego, can I add something to what Stevan said? Because I completely agree. We've been spending a lot of time with central banks as part of RSK Enterprise, and offering them the whole suite of solutions available on the public blockchain to be deployed on an enterprise or private solution, and pushing forward for the use of open source technology for the CBDCs, for the central bank digital currencies, and make sure that those solutions are interoperable with the public blockchains. As Stevan was saying. And I have to tell you that I see the open blockchains much more open, the communities, in working with interoperability. And it's the CBDCs and the central banks that are more reluctant because they come from a different background and different paradigm. And it resembles so much to me the intranet versus internet discussions from the early days. And I think maybe the lack of vision for interoperability, it might be one of the main reasons that will end up dooming this CBDC or enterprise or private solutions, because they want to protect whatever they think they have from the rest instead of sharing and building together.
Hey, Gabriel, do you think that, sorry to go off script here, do you think that, so let's say this world occurs where you've got many CBDCs, they're all running either a private chain or a private chain with some sort of bridge out, but for the most part it's walled off. Do you think that will actually kill interoperability, or do you think it will simply be like, hey, we've moved the traditional finance into this sort of mostly walled garden, but there is still this sort of more decentralized finance or open finance underneath it. And so the interoperability is still there. It just sort of slows down when it comes to the more governmental solutions.
So it's very difficult to do forward-looking,
sure, of course.
and try to anticipate the future, especially with the speed on which everything is evolving. But every time I'm trying to predict what's happening, I go back to the user, right? Yeah. And I mean, whatever the technology that we will end up using is whatever is best for the user. So if the user will have a wallet where he or she can interact with any crypto asset and request a loan and put their capital to work, and suddenly this application does not interact with a certain CBDC, well, it's going to be impossible for that CBDC to replicate the amount of innovation that is happening in the open blockchain. So probably that CBDC will die. And central banks will see it once, twice, and there's like, okay, I need to be part of the norm. So that will make those CBDCs interoperable because they want them to see them survive. And then the user will have, multiple assets in a wallet and say, why should I keep the balance in Argentine pesos where they are debasing every day? Why should I keep US dollars or any other fiat currency or a stable coin? So I think the user will understand and will decide to use different assets and also different networks for different use cases. So maybe I'm paying the coffee and I will do it with Lightning Network or Raiden or RSK or Algorand, and then I'm buying a house or putting a treasury for my inheritance, and then I will decide to use Bitcoin. People will understand, but it's very important that we go through this transition, which is the tricky time, where users are not tech savvy, where the technology is not very user friendly, and where regulation is still very strong. That I don't know in the middle, but in the long term, it's easier for me.
Cool, thanks.
Great. It was a great point. It was actually one of my questions, so it's nice to see that it appears organically. So one more, and we will see if we can have time for another one. Do you think we are in a period of time, in a moment that it is good to start having standards for interoperability, or do you think it's better to still have some or free time without constraints to continue exploring and doing innovation? Because when something standardized, it's kind of harder to break the standard.
Yeah, my perspective on this is, the standards versus the innovation, definitely competitive tension there. But I don't think they're mutually exclusive. As with a lot of things in this world, you need like both of those sides really coming at each other. You need smart, passionate people who are determined to build what they want to do and to push their vision forward. You need both the standards people and you need the innovation people doing their thing. And the fact is, the standards are only going to be standards if they're good. And if I think Gabriel said this about the CBDC, if it's not hitting the need, it's going to die out. And so you need people trying to standardize and continually trying to pull the community into a critical mass. And you also need people trying to innovate and getting a better place for people to critical mass around. So it's kind of a non-answer, but I think you got to have both, and both sides got to be passionate about what they're doing, and that's the way you eventually make the progress you want to make.
I understand. Yep, it's like a balance in a sense.
For sure. If no one's doing standards, you're going to get amazing innovation, but there's 100,000 different ways to do it, right? And if people are only doing standards, you're not going to get any innovation, and you're going to do this thing. So it's got to be a symbiotic relationship climbing up the ladder together.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else wants to add something to that, or should I jump in?
Yeah. So standardization through collaborating with like other development teams through the years too. I think one of the things is people buy when you develop a solution. Let's say it's an API solution, for example. People use like different protocols and API standards for their project, and when you do that, I would say, especially for developers, like you really buy into your API. Like that's like it's your connectivity to the blockchain stuff, and someone else might come to you and say, hey, what if you do it this way? But then you're also asking them to change the entire way they interact with their network. So but what you can do is, instead of asking people to change differently, you could just say, hey, what's the underlying protocol you're using to communicate with your blockchain? So let's say JSON RPC. Let's just build around that. And then anyone who, whether it's libraries like Web3, like as long as if you're building around JSON RPC and you're talking to the same EVM, there's a lot of ways you can collaborate there. So I think when you have that same symbiotic relationship of innovation and standards, if you have the same fundamentals, you're just going to keep going. And in the blockchain space, it's I don't know. I feel like I'll always be the Wild West for standards, and because no one's stopping anyone from creating things better. And if everything's open source, you have millions of people in the world that are going to have 1,000 times ways of making things better. So honestly, I feel like the improvement is the room for improvement is never ending in this space. That's why I think just crypto and decentralized solutions and open source. You've seen a lot of central banks and other companies, they try to buy into like these private solutions, but then they'll stop that progress because they're like, the public blockchain space, man, it's got all the brains, all the energy there. That's where everyone wants to contribute. So and we have all the incentive mechanisms for that. We have a token, all this other stuff. So there's just so much value and so much brain power getting pumped in. I don't know if we're going to ever be locked in, but we'll certainly have whatever the market, whatever has the majority market share. But I even think that will continue to be improved. And especially because we had backward compatibility and all these other things that we have to think of. So, you could come out with a new standard, but it's like, guess what? Whatever you're doing before, if we update things, you'll continue to be able to use all your systems, all your smart contracts, everything. So we're able to port everything. We're able to create something that's breaking, but create solutions to put everything else together. And someone else is going to come out like, I got an even better way to do it. Is it backward compatible? Even better.
Great. Thanks, Stevan. Daniel, I know if you want to add something.
Yes, so I think that if we look at how standards emerge, basically all of our standards are kind of emergent. There's no compulsion, everything is open source and everything is voluntary. So the way standards emerge is that somebody who develops a good solution writes it up as a standards proposal, and if others find it useful, they just start using it, and we have a standard suddenly. So I think that standards, they, especially in our space, are born out of innovation, and the really well-written proposals are going to get followed, and we have a standard. So I don't think that it should be a conscious decision that, or a dilemma that, I innovate or I adhere to the standard. If the standard is good enough that it can accommodate your innovation, then you're better off following it because there are more tools and more libraries at your disposal and more work done by others in general. But if there's nothing that in the standard that would cover your use case, well, then you just write a standard and hope that it's good enough for others to adopt. So I think that at least that was my experience with the ERC process, the EIP process, the Ethereum improvement process, that if you write up something that others find useful and do the diplomacy, ask around what other projects might use it, find objectionable, so there's some of that before the standard gets accepted. But if you kind of look around and talk to people and accommodate everybody's needs, then you might end up with a standard that people will use and will be happy.
Diego, something that I would like to add related to this. So we have a problem in the space that we don't have enough developers. No, the standards help to make this technology easier for new developers to join and adopt this, but we still have millions of Java developers in the world that do not know how to program smart contracts or interact with blockchain technology. So I think also compilers, as Paul was describing before, will be key to make this technology easier to absorb by new developers. And this is the only way we can really have an impact in the world, if we can embrace in the next couple of years millions of developers that are currently outside the blockchain space with standards and compilers that let them just with the current skill set that they have be able to contribute to the space. And I know you Diego and Sergio have been discussing this now for a long time, how to expand this toolkit.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I agree with all of you when you said that the standards will emerge and it will not be an issue because the community will follow the one that is better, and if it doesn't work, a new one will appear. So I like that spirit on this ecosystem. Yeah.
Like natural selection.
Exactly. Yeah. We are almost done. I will do one more, and then we can go to the final thoughts. Do you think there is a trade-off between security and usability when designing an interoperable solution, or trying to make a design that wasn't conceived as interoperable to make it interoperable?
So, I think there's a couple of things. I really think that, there's particularly in this particular conversation on interoperability, there's a difference between sort of complexity or usability for the underlying infrastructure providers and the complexity and usability for the end users. Generally, and this is with some caveats, like I'm okay with that complexity under the hood as long as you can make that user experience nice and easy. Of course, it does come with some caveats. Complexity breeds vulnerability. So, if you can't think of these back-end solutions, which is a problem I think we have in the industry right now. These back-end solutions are thought of as write it fast, get it to market, I got to be first. that's where all the complexity lies, which means they're all, not all, that's an unfair statement, but many of them aren't able to actually handle what they were built to do, because they were built fast to get to market. And I know that, you know, it's sort of at odds with the innovation pace in the market, but I really think we need to start taking a little bit more time with these back-end solutions. And I guess I'm thinking a little bit more like just DeFi here, not overall interoperability. I know, you know, many of the folks on this call have taken their time and have done it the right way. The second problem with that complexity on the back end is the complexity, the way it leaks through to the end user is not for additional complexity for the end user, but it creates a need for trust. There is so much complexity on this back end. I can't figure out what's going on. So I have to just assume that it's doing its job. And you know, here's what it's telling me it's doing its job, and I've got some other people telling me it's doing its job. So I'll just trust it. And I think that's when you can get into some not as great situations, because you know it's so complex you can't actually verify what's going on. So I guess I took one position, and I put a lot of caveats on there in terms of the trade-offs. I think I will say, just to throw this disruptor in with 2 minutes left, I think maintainability, I think is a property that is as important as security and usability. The fragility of some of the solutions that are out there in terms of when one chain changes or the other chain changes, how quickly can these solutions adapt? How do they adapt, and how quickly do they adapt to make sure they can continue talking to the sides they need to talk to? And I think that's one that's probably not talked about as much, but can be equally important in terms of the long-term usage of these interoperability solutions.
Great. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to all that.
I can go. So what Paul said about maintainability, like that's definitely a security concern, because you know, if the protocol has a bug, that bug has to be addressed in source code and has to be released hopefully as soon as possible and tested as possible to all the end users. For example, when Ethereum had that network split because of a Go Ethereum bug, you know, yeah, and the Gef team doesn't have too many people on it, but you know, you need people, you need like protocol developers on hand, and you know, to basically fix bugs in the network. And also when it comes to security and usability, like the security is very complex, and the usability, as far as, you know, you want to get more developers on board. I think it's going to happen in the next few years, because I think you know, more and more people are getting on board. Like we have Hyperledger Besu, which the call is very supportive of. Which is written in Java, and we think that's a strategic position because, you know, there's a lot of Java developers out there. And I was talking to some principal former developers from Amazon and Google, people who have absolutely, this is just a few months ago, they absolutely never even bothered to look at blockchain, which this is just their experience, and they're very skilled people, and you know, and yeah, you talk about block headers, all this other stuff. You kind of then they kind of get zoned out because they're used to like the traditional environment. But then you tell them like, hey, this is the service, and you can interface it with JSON RPC, and then they're like, oh, I get the whole thing now. I could just run it and interact with it. Where's the API? All right, there you go. Now I can build on blockchain. So sometimes it comes to the communication to get more developers to start building, and you know, eventually they start to get into the fray, and whatever they don't have, they'll try to build interoperable solutions. And also, like, when we think about security, like what do we do when we think about security? Are we open to saying that a centralized solution has security or a decentralized solution has security? I would argue both, but it depends on what the users want. And I would say more and more users want the peer-to-peer service because of the underlying fundamentals. And we could definitely do a better job in usability because, you know, when we think about, you know, when Bitcoin first came out, or when it's still out, it's still here today. But I would say most people, you know, they see that hash of their address and they get very scared. They probably don't even look at their bank account numbers. Like that's something they just never used to. And one time I talked to a retired firefighter. Absolutely not technical. He's absolutely not technical at all. And he's like, you know, this blockchain stuff, like he agrees with the philosophy of it, but he's scared of it because he doesn't know how to use any of it. And you know, my grandmother can't even use you know, an iPhone, right? So how do we create usability to those people in a secure way? And in my opinion, I think a lot of centralized solutions are going to provide to a lot of those people. Like when we think about exchanges, you know, exchanges offer, you know, you could say security or not security, but they're offering a reasonable amount of security for people who don't know how to do things in a more decentralized fashion. Maybe they don't know like how to store their key store file or their private keys. So there's, I don't know, I guess I'd say security is kind of a spectrum. And I would say the centralization and decentralization have their own security aspects, but it's always going to be a spectrum. And it even comes with the interoperability there. Like, yeah, we could wrap tokens in a decentralized manner, but you know, your exchange it's a centralized exchange, and you don't even have to interact with the smart contract on chain or set gas. You can just click the transfer button and it flips a token, but the whole back end is complex. You're just completely hidden from it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Great, thanks, Stevan. We are already past 2 minutes from the original time, so we can end here, or we can do a round of final thoughts if you have the time. I know I will leave it up to you.
I can give you a final thought, Diego, related to this question that we were talking before, is that we already have the bar super high, because centralized financial solutions like WeChat or Venmo or Facebook, Libra are amazing from a user standpoint. So anything that we do below that kind of user experience will have a very hard time to get mass adoption. So I guess this trade-off, that we need to be smarter, especially because we live in a world that is getting worse and worse in terms of surveillance every day. And trust is something that in general people do not appreciate until it's broken. So those of us coming from Latin American countries that have gone through dictatorships and hyperinflation and bank runs, and we kind of have it more clear, the importance of not the lack of need to trust the third party, or to trust your government, or to trust your politicians. But the general public tends to, you know, not care too much about those things until they have a dictator in the country, until they get their assets taken away from them. So I think there's a lot of stake, and the bar in terms of user experience and usability and adoption is very high. So we need as many bright minds as we have today in the panel and the ecosystem as a whole, working together, making the protocols interoperable, because we as an industry are together trying to transform our society, which is going in the wrong direction. So unless we are crazy enough to be able to drive a significant change in our society, things are not going to get any good. So I'm still hopeful, and interoperability is one of the characteristics that I appreciate the most, that I think give us a chance to be successful.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you, Gabriel. Paul, Daniel, any final thoughts on this topic? And so we
no
can...
final thoughts from me other than appreciate you guys having me, and I appreciate the other folks on the panel for the good discussion.
Great, Daniel.
Well, again, thank you very much for having me, and I really enjoyed this discussion as well. And as a final thought, I might add that interoperability, I think, is intimately linked to scalability, because different solutions reach different people, and if we want to reach all of them, then interoperability is the only way.
I would like to put just the last thought, because a lot of us are, I guess we're not meeting, we're not necessarily going to meetups, and we're not necessarily, sometimes conferences when we see a lot of our partners or something like that during COVID times. So I'd say when it comes, when you want to have interoperability and collaboration, if you see a project, just reach out to them and ask them for a sit down with coffee. It's like just get conversations going, because while we're all cooped up from lockdowns, or some of us are locked inside now, but we have our phones. We can still have these conversations going with one another, and that's how that's one of the ways we can all collaborate.
Yes, I agree on that. So thank you very much for having me here with you. I learned a lot, and I enjoyed this time discussing this topic. So hope to see you and to collaborate with you in the future. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, guys, and everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.